Hello. Today we'll be looking at robot visions from the past. Here is the cover from the movie Metropolis. Metropolis is a film depicting a dystopian future where workers have become so dehumanized they are compared to robots or soulless machines. Metropolis was made in the 1920s right after the peak of the Second Industrial Revolution. The 1920s was still a time when labor laws were being created and instituted, so the movie fits right into a society of hard laboring workers and elites they work for. Going forward with the concept in Metropolis of workers being automations, Unimate, the first industrial robot, is a machine worker. Unimate was used at General Motors to work with heated die casting machines. Unimate was a very large step for the industry, and nowadays industrial robots are iconic of factories. Before the industrial robot, the assembly line consisted of workers performing monotonous tasks. Industrial robots play a massive role in making manufacturing easier, safer, and quicker process. What led up to robots like Unimate can be rooted in the Second Industrial Revolution. In the wake of the Second Industrial Revolution, there were many new technologies and systems that made the manufacturing process better. And industrial robots like Unimate showed perfectly the culmination of over three-quarters of a century of progress. The Second Industrial Revolution brought about many new technologies and systems with focuses on things that the First Revolution could not. The largest difference from the first to the second would be the focus on science and technology systems. This created more and way larger systems and networks with technologies. An example would be the telegraph and the railroad, which go hand in hand. By the early 20th century, the Second Industrial Revolution had left its mark on Europe and the United States. The new scientific management method called Taylorism is becoming widely used, especially in the United States. Taylorism takes the idea of trimming wasted time and uses it in the most efficient way possible, bringing technology to have the maximum positives and minimum amount of negatives. This can be seen very well with Colt's manufacturing facility and also with Ford's factory as well. Ford switched from the static assembly line to the conveyor belt type process very efficiently, so much so that he cut his production time of Model T in half and was able to mass produce cars cheaply, quickly, and not having the workers move nearly at all. The parts came right to them. Colt implemented the idea of interchangeable parts, allowing all parts to be made in mass and then put together somewhere else in the factory. Ford and Colt are both great examples of what the American system of manufacturing became to be. The American system of manufacturing focused around the division of labor, uniformity, mass scale, rationality, standardization, straight rows, and interchangeable parts. This is where robots can be fit in. In the 1920s, and maybe some years before, the idea of mechanical being, humanoid or not, started to take form, and soon there were depictions of such a robot in films and literature. Such depictions were in many films of the early 20th or mid to 20th century, and even now, especially sci-fi based ones. Metropolis is a great example of a dystopian sci-fi film showing how workers have become slaves and have become dehumanized by automation. These workers are shown as soulless and nearly inhuman, and then the real robot is introduced as the ideal worker for being all of the above. Looking back into class context, the industries want to keep the American system of manufacturing and all of its ideals around. This made the individual workers have less value as they were becoming just a cog in the machine. Robot opinion changed as time continued and created new scenarios with robots included along the way. In the 1930s, there was the technologically advanced Electro at the 1939 World's Fair in NY. Electro could walk, talk, and smoke a cigarette. In the 1940s, Isaac Asimov, a famous science fiction author, started to write about robots. The 1940s society portrayed robots as becoming the new housemaid with Rollo, making the housewife's job easier and more enjoyable. As seen in class, with the less work for mother, more technological innovations introduced meant more work had to be done. So, would the Rollo really make life easier, or maybe more tedious and expensive? From the 1950s onward, there were many great examples of what robots could end up doing. The book from 1950, I, Robot, and the movie from 1984, Terminator, are well-known ones showing the unreliability of robots and their destructive power. Nowadays, depictions of robots of the future are still very similar to what they have always been. The movie Ex Machina shows a robot with the ability to have independent thinking. This is very similar to Isaac Asimov's interpretation of robots. The only big difference is that Asimov created a set of rules that all robots have to follow, whereas in Ex Machina, it is independent. Throughout all of these books or films, there are two common themes: robots being very efficient and making human life easier, or trying to kill humans. Robots making life easier can also be seen in real life with the introduction of industrial robots. Modern industrial robots start to appear in the early 1960s. With the introduction of Ford's straight assembly lines, the next best step for efficiency and standardization would be mechanization of all processes, and now that was possible. Industrial robots created this new element. The use of industrial robots to build anything they are used for, from cars to refrigerators, shows this well. In recent times, humans work side by side with these industrial robots, making sure they are in order, as well as doing what they should be. The fear of losing a factory job to robots developed during the 1960s with the institution of industrial robots, and this fear is spreading to other professions today. The visions of the future from the past either showed robots making human life easier and better, or showed destruction. Looking at industrial robotics, it can be seen as a bit of both, with the taking of jobs and the saving of hard labor. Nowadays, the visions of the past are taking shape in certain ways. The Roomba, the robot vacuum cleaner, for instance, takes some manual vacuuming and automates it. Besides household robots, there are more and more robots being used in other parts of society. There are private companies that are creating robots for military use. Boston Dynamics is a great example with their Atlas robot that can talk, walk, and balance itself.